Section 1 of the Mysterious Forces of Civilization by Abdul-Baha Abbas. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Nicholas James Bridgewater. The Mysterious Forces of Civilization by Abdul-Baha Abbas. Translated by Johanna Dawud. Section 1. The Mysterious Forces of Civilization. O people of Persia, look in the garden of antiquity, and incline your heads in meditation, seeing with the eyes of wisdom. Repent, for here is the tragedy of a people. In former times, Persia was verily the heart of the world, and shone among the nations, as it were a lighted taper. Her glory and prosperity broke from the horizon of humanity like the true dawn, disseminating the light of knowledge and illumining the nations of the East and West. The fame of her victorious kings reached the ears of the dwellers at the poles of the earth. The majesty of her King of Kings humbled the monarchs of Greece and Rome. Her governing wisdom filled the sages with awe, and the rulers of the continents fashioned their laws upon her polity. The Persians being distinguished amongst the nations of the earth as a people of conquerors, and justly admired for their civilization and learning, their country became the glorious center of all the sciences and arts, the mine of culture and a fount of virtues. The wisdom and understanding of this people were the admiration of the nations of the world, and their prudence and genius were the cause of emulation amongst all men. In the records of the Persians, which are supported by the Old Testament, whose inspiration is accepted by the nations of Europe, it is directly stated that in the time of Cyrus, called in the Persian books Bahman ibn Esfandiyar, the Persian rule extended from the confines of India and China to the uttermost regions of the Yemen and Ethiopia. This vast empire was divided into 360 provinces, over each of which was placed a satrap. Note, see Isaiah 44:28, 45:1, 47, etc., Daniel 7:8, etc. And it is written in Roman history that this zealous king, with a numerous army, utterly defeated the all-conquering Romans, and shook the pillars of the kingdoms of the world. And as regards the history of Abul-Fada, one of the most trustworthy of Arab writers, he states that his conquests extended over the 7 divisions of the world. It is likewise mentioned in his works, as well as in those of other writers, that Faridun, one of the kings of the Pishdaudian dynasty, a prince of great magnificence and sagacity, of incomparable perfection, wisdom and understanding, and a famous conqueror and superior to all the kings who preceded and succeeded him, divided the whole of the known world amongst his 3 sons. Note, name of an ancient and celebrated king of Persia, the commencement of whose reign is placed about 750 BC. In short, according to the histories of the most famous nations, it is manifestly proved that the first great kingdom that was established in the world, and the greatest government that was formed by its inhabitants, was the dominant throne and ruling diadem of Persia. Therefore, O people of Persia, we must rouse ourselves from the intoxication of carnal desire and throw off neglectful somnolence and idle sloth. Let us consider whether the enthusiasm and ambition of rational men can suffer this most blessed land, which aforetime was a fountain of civilization for the whole earth, the spring of glory and of true felicity for humanity, the envy of the world and the cause of emulation for all Oriental and Occidental peoples, to become a byword and a reproach amongst all races and nations? And are its barbarities in the present age to be graven in the eternal pages of the book of time? Is this nation, which was the noblest of nations, now to remain satisfied in such an exceedingly grievous condition? And is this country, which possesses the most salubrious climate, to be counted among the least progressive of the nations of the world by reason of its lack of industry and enterprise and the absence of modern invention? Did not the Persians of a former age excel in every branch of human activity? Were they not the title page of the Book of Wisdom? Did they not, by the grace of God, shine in the horizon of learning like a great luminary? How is it that we are now sunk in contentment despite our calamitous condition? How is it that we continue to follow the path of our carnal desires, and having been blinded to that which is the cause of prosperity and most acceptable to the threshold of the Almighty God, and seeking naught but our personal advancement and selfish interests, how is it that this excellent country, which like a lamp shone with the light of learning, the brightness of the sciences and arts, from the pillar of dignity and resolute endeavor, the heights of wisdom, fortitude, and humanity, now by reason of our sloth, vanity, and indifference, from the lack of knowledge and organization, from the poverty of the zeal and ambition of her people, has suffered the rays of her prosperity to be darkened and well nigh extinguished? The 7 heavens and the 7 earths are full of pity for the beloved. It must not be supposed that the Persians are inferior in their natural vivacity, understanding, ingenuity, wisdom, intellect, perception, or in their physical capacities to other men. God forbid! On the contrary, they have been, and can be, models to all nations and tribes through the originality of their genius. Likewise, the kingdom of Persia possesses exceptional fertility, an equable climate, and great natural beauty. Thought, however, is needed, and industry and enterprise, education and energy are wanting. Perseverance and enthusiasm alone can avail us. At the present time, Europe and some parts of America are renowned amongst the 5 continents for the excellence of their government, their eminence in the arts and sciences, whilst in ancient times they were the least considerable of the nations, the most ignorant and slothful of the people of the earth. Justly they were called barbarians. Moreover, from the 5th to the 15th century of the Christian era, the period known as the Middle Ages, there occurred amongst them so many terrible events and catastrophes that these 10 centuries are counted by Europeans as the dark ages of history. The foundation of civilization and advancement in Europe was established in the 15th century of the Christian era, and all the development and the encouragement of wise men in their ambitions as well as the general increase of knowledge, date from that period. Now it seemeth that the Shah, the refuge of the oppressed, by divine aid, and in accordance with the efforts of the manifestation of universal prophethood, Bahá'u'lláh, hath raised the tent of justice over the whole land. The bright morning of his clemency has followed on the dawn of fair intention, so that the fountain of right and charity will surely be established in this glorious kingdom. He will erect the pillars of learning and civilization, and put into practice that which leads to progress, insomuch that this imperial age may, in verity, become the envy of all times past. Heretofore it was not manifest that the sovereign in whose directing hand lies the controlling reins of these matters, and upon whose beneficent will dependeth the betterment of men's condition, would, like a gracious father, strive for the advancement and civilization of his people. Therefore I and my like were silent. But now it is made clear to such as possess understanding that the King himself has determined without strife to lay a sure foundation of progress and just rule for all his people, and these are indeed the signs of his goodness. Wonderful it is to relate that the whole people did not arise and give thanks and praise to God for the great gift, which is indeed a sure mark of the grace of the most glorious Lord, that they did not soar up on the wings of joy and thankfulness into the eternal regions of true happiness, and with full hearts give prayer and supplication to the one worthy court of Almighty God for the daily increasing graciousness of our mighty Prince. Some, indeed, whose minds and thoughts have been corrupted by the canker of personal hatred, the serenity of whose judgment has been clouded by the dust of selfishness, and darkened by their mists of interests, and others debasing their powers in satisfying their worldly desires and ambitions, and in seeking by devious paths their self-advancement, have raised the banner of jealousy, and have lifted up their voices in complaint. Hitherto they querulously asked, why is the Shah unmindful of the public weal, and why does he not strive for the peace and quiet of his people? But now that His Majesty has determined to adopt this great measure, they make other objections. Some say that these ideas are foreign to the genius of Persia, are useless in the present exigencies, and are repugnant to the ancient customs of the country. And some mistaken persons, having collected a scanty gathering of people who are careless of the principles of their own religion, and ignorant of the fundamentals of the true law, and devoid of discrimination, address them, saying, these are the laws of the countries of unbelievers, and therefore contrary to our observances. Whosoever adopts the customs of nations, verily he is of them. Note, by similar objections, even today, March 1909, a certain reactionary clergy is trying to appraise the people against the Constitution, and short-sighted courtiers manage to prevent the Shah Muhammad Ali from letting his subjects profit by the institutions granted to them by his father. Some believe that such alterations must be suffered to proceed by slow and gradual evolution, one thing following on another, adding, there is no reason for haste. And others believe that the Persians ought of themselves to discover these things which be necessary to the improvement of their policy, their public instruction, and their civilization, and that there is no need to acquire inspiration from other nations, but each group should dwell in its own world. O people of Persia, how long will ye wander? How long be filled with vain imaginings? How long continue your differences of opinion, useless antagonism, carelessness and ignorance? Rivals are awake, while we are negligently sleeping. Other nations strive for the improvement of their public well-being, but every one of us is snared by his worldly ambitions, and is oft snared anew. The Lord of the universe is witness that this, his servant, has no aim to flatter or attract men's hearts in the setting forth of these facts, that he looks for no reward, but gives utterance to his thoughts in obedience to the will of God. Having turned my eyes from the world and its inhabitants, I have taken refuge in the saving grace of the Lord of Oneness. From you I ask for naught, for God indeed is my recompense. Those who say that these modern ideas accord with the spirit of other nations and are in no way applicable to the present requirements of the Persian kingdom, indeed forget that those other countries were in former ages even as we are now. How is it that these principles and this civilization have been the cause of the progress of those countries? Have the people of Europe suffered any loss by seeking these ideals? Or have they, on the contrary, attained to the highest degree of material prosperity? For many centuries Persia has remained unchanged, retaining her ancient customs. What benefit and progress has she obtained? Had these things not been proved by experience, they would possibly have been doubted by those in the mirror of whose mind the bright light of intention is extinguished. But as it is, these causes and effects have been put to the test in other countries, and the benefits of civilization have been so plainly manifested that they are comprehended even of the wilfully blind. Now, having closed the eyes of prejudice, we must examine by the light of justice and determine which of these strong bases is contrary to the welfare of Persia, or opposed to the public interest. Is the widening of the circle of knowledge, or the increase of science and the useful arts, and the formation of new and learned callings, raising the people from the depths of ignorance to the lofty horizon of knowledge and virtue, fairly to be considered harmful? Is the establishment of just rule according to the precepts of divine commandment, which is indeed the great support of human happiness and the firm defense of the rights of the people under its strong protection, the right indeed of public liberty, adverse to the prosperity and safety of our countrymen? Is it then contrary to the precepts of wisdom to consider the future with the eyes of discernment, or to attempt to measure the ulterior results of the thoughts of the world, and to compare them with the present condition of affairs, or to strive for the general well-being of the state? Is it not advisable to seek the causes of union with neighboring countries, and to make binding treaties with great nations, to maintain liens of friendship with more favored peoples, or to extend the circle of commerce to the east and west? Is it contrary to the decrees of Providence to increase the exportation of the natural products of our country, and to enrich its inhabitants, and are such things repugnant to sound sense and true religion? Should we not endeavour to restrict the powers of governors of districts and provinces, and to limit their tyranny and injustice, which indeed have destroyed the peace and happiness of our land? Should we not compel them to administer judgment according to right laws, And would it not be preferable that the severer penalties, such as those of death and imprisonment, should depend solely on the mandate of His Majesty and on the decision of the courts of justice situated in the capital of the state, so that, after due inquiry as to the nature of the crime, punishment should be meted out according to the decree of the law? Are these things indeed an attack on the foundations of society? To close the doors of bribery, to abolish the corruption of justice, a practice now favourably known by the fair name of pishkash. Note, pishkash is the name given in Persian to any kind of present given by an inferior to his superior. End note. Which so hardeneth the hearts of the rulers of this age, that a right interpretation of the law is refused to the beggar, and fairness and equity are utterly forgotten. Can this, indeed, be considered to destroy the administration of impartial justice? Should we not, indeed, save the whole body of soldiers who risked their lives on many occasions of peril in the service of the government and the nation, from the greatness of their poverty and from sore oppression, and endeavour to ameliorate their lot and to improve their rations, uniforms and dwellings, and strive to teach their officers the art of war and to be prepared for battle? Should we not provide them with firearms and ammunition? And can we be blamed for our desire to do so? Note, in Persia, with the exception of a few regiments under the command of Russian officers, there is practically no army. The soldiers who are to maintain order throughout the country receive neither clothes nor pay, and are in consequence obliged to have a trade by which to support themselves. Thus most of the time they cannot be depended upon, except when they can derive their livelihood from plunder. Abdul-Bahá acknowledges that at the present time an organized state is bound to keep an army, but on the necessity of suppressing war, see page 73. End note. Some will say that the time is not yet ripe for these suggested improvements, but had they considered justly, they would have realized that, if this be the case, it is only owing to the lack of unity in the public mind, and the poverty of zeal and resolution amongst the ministers and nobles of the state. It is most clear and manifest that national affairs will never revolve around their proper axis until the whole people have received instruction and public thought has been directed to a single end. The ministers and even the lowest officers of state must be completely purified from all suspicion, and must assume the garment of chastity and of pure life, and the improved condition we so earnestly desire will not have attained until the regulation of public and private manners reach such a degree of perfection that it become impossible for any man to swerve one hair's breadth from the right path, even should he endeavour to do so, so that all government may be administered according to the laws of equity and justice, and that the responsible ministers find it impossible to swerve to the right or to the left, and of necessity pursue the way of righteousness. All partiality and perversion of justice by bribery, for personal liking or hatred, must be abolished, and both sides should be heard without favour. Neither should the wicked be justified, nor the innocent condemned. The ways and means of producing happiness and good are capable of gross abuse, and much dependeth upon the opinion, capability, piety, truthfulness, benevolence, and the extent of zeal of the governed and their rulers. And as for His Majesty, he indeed has fulfilled his duty, and has placed the public affairs, upon which depend the well-being of the people, under the capable direction of their representatives in the councils of the state. And if these persons, that is, the ministers of state, retain the robe of chastity and pureness, and do not contaminate the hem thereof with baseness, the assistance of the Almighty will not fail them, but will make them a source of blessing to the whole world. He will cause all manner of benefits to flow both from their tongues and pens, so that the cities of Persia will shine with the light of justice, which, like a flaming torch, will illuminate the habitable globe. This is nothing but the work of the Almighty God. But if these persons behave otherwise, evil results will be made manifest, and this indeed has been the case, and seen of men's eyes in certain foreign countries, that, after the establishment of a parliament, this very assembly became the cause of public confusion, and the good innovations brought forth great catastrophes. The establishment of councils and the foundation of deliberative assemblies. But there are some rules which are necessary in order firmly to establish such organizations. Firstly, the elected members must be religious persons, God-fearing, high-minded, and followers of the law. Secondly, they should have an accurate knowledge of the divine commandments, of the most important fundamental matters, and of the rules of the loosing and binding of domestic affairs and foreign relations. They should possess a knowledge of the sciences and arts necessary to civilization, and finally be contented with the income derived from their personal property. It must not be imagined that to find members possessed of these qualities would be an impossible or even a difficult matter, and by the help of God and His saints, and the earnest endeavor of zealous men, all obstacles may be surmounted. The difficulties of those who make difficulties in all things can be overcome, as in the twinkling of an eye. But if, on the contrary, the members are mean, ignorant, having no knowledge of political economy, wanting in ambition, lacking in zeal, foolish, slothful, and seeking their personal or private advantages, then no good can possibly result from assemblies so formed. Whereas in former times a poor man had to give a gratuity to one individual in order to obtain his rights, he might now be obliged to satisfy the demands of the entire body. After close consideration, it will be obviously manifest that the chief cause of oppression, injustice, and the mismanagement of affairs is owing to the dearth of true piety and the absence of public instruction. Take, for example, a people truly pious, proficient in reading, writing, and possessed of a variety of sciences. Should an action be perpetrated contrary to the justice of God and of their sovereign, they must first of all appeal to the local government, and then, if no redress be obtained, they must carry the question in dispute to the High Court, explaining the deviation of their local government from the paths of justice. The High Court should then demand explanations from that locality. Certainly, the person who discovered the error and corruption undermining the local government should be entitled to gratitude and reward from the public. But the majority of the people, owing to their want of instruction, are unable to make their requirements understood. Moreover, there are people who, from the obscurity of their rank and their lack of education, have not yet experienced the delights of well-being and of true justice. And indeed they have not drunk from the pure water of good intention, and consequently do not appreciate and have no gratitude for the exposure of public wrong. They have not yet understood that the greatest glory of man, the universal happiness of the world, consists in the joys of soul, high ambition, good intention, virtue and chastity. Unhappily, they imagine that greatness and glory follow on the accumulation of worldly riches and similar vanities. Now clearly consider, if a man give a thought, he will see that the omnipotent God has distinguished him from amongst his creatures by the dress of honour, of virtue and intelligence. Verily we have created man in the image of God. He has been made to shine forth from the morning of unity by the blessings of divine manifestations. Man has become the spring of divine wonders and the centre of the mysteries of the heavenly kingdom. Now why should he pollute this pure mantle with the stain of selfish desires, and exchange this eternal honour for the lowest depths of baseness? Dost thou think thy body a small thing, while in thee is enfolded the great universe? If it were not my chief object to shorten this treatise, I would write briefly concerning several matters of spiritual interest, and explain the high dignity and sublime glory of true humanity. We will, however, leave this for a later occasion. In the centre of the world of being, the greatest dignity and the highest honour, both outward and inward, and in the beginning and the end, belong to the prophets of God, although poverty indeed has at all times been their chief possession. And for a like cause universal honour is ascribed to the saints and the beloved of God. They did not seek wealth or self-advancement, neither did those kings and rulers whose fame for just government and greatness filled the world occupy themselves only with their personal ambition and the acquirement of riches, but accounted the general weal and the increase of the inhabitants of their countries and of the public treasure as their greatest care. Their glory was not bought with gold or silver, but was purchased by the soundness of their principles and the nobility of their aspirations. Those great ministers who place God's will before their own have been burning lamps of science among men of learning. They employ their wisdom for the general good of their countrymen. They prove themselves worthy examples of honest and virtuous endeavour, and with small hope of reward give their lives to the increase of public good, and in their wisdom deliver just ordinances to the people, setting the palm of peace among the nations. Thus they attained the highest pinnacle of the mountain of glory and of honour. Likewise, the learned and famous ulama, note, the body of the divines who are called upon to give their advice on religious questions, end note, the repository of sound doctrine, and the wielders of the strong handle of piety and of the fear of God, place their trust in Him and hold fast to the garment of salvation, and the mirror of their thoughts is adorned with the signs of sublime realities and reflect the sum of universal knowledge. So they are diligently engaged, both night and day, in acquiring useful sciences and teaching and educating their chosen pupils. The hidden treasures of kings cannot be compared with a drop of the water of science, nor with the smallest cup of their learning, and the heaped up talents of gold and silver cannot be equal to the solution of the least abstruse of their problems. Those learned men consider the pleasures of foreign nations as the playthings of children, and account riches and worldly pomp the fit reward of the mean and ignorant. Like the birds, they are content with a few grains for their sustenance, but the melody of their wisdom and their knowledge will excite the astonishment of the intelligent and discerning among the sages of the world. Such are those rulers who are benevolent and wise, whose dignity and real happiness lie in the well-being of the public, whose ambition consists in diligently searching after such things as will justify them and their wealth, and will bring happiness and peace upon the people. There can be no true satisfaction or contentment apart from the general prosperity. Consider, for example, the great men of a country, those who are wise and pure in heart, and notable for the excellence of their natural perception, and all other qualities leading to happiness in this world and the next, in honor, dignity, and nobility. Does their greatness consist in their true and faithful service, their zeal and anxiety to do God's will, to please the king, and to satisfy the hearts of the people? Or in luxury of habit, in extravagant feasting, and in every kind of sensual pleasure, leading to the ultimate ruination of the people, injury to the hearts of the servants of God, their banishment from the court of the Almighty, in estrangement from the potent majesty of the king, and in the hatred and scorn of their countrymen? Verily, the decayed bones in the sepulchre are better than the like of these. Of what use are they who have not tasted the heavenly manna of virtue, nor drunk of the pure spring of human kindness? End of section 1.